All right. So GAMPRG2. So GAMPRG2 is somewhat just like GAMPRG1, but you will be using both C++ and blueprints. So on on the first project, it literally is just and this genre. However, it'll be done in C++, right? But your second project is totally different. It is if you've done Sir Ian's class of iOS, it's also the same. It is still tower defense, but you're gonna be using both C++ and blueprints. Okay, so course outline, Unreal Engine, Event Dispatcher. So Event Dispatcher is it's just Event Dispatcher using C++. You've done the Event Dispatcher back in GAMPROG 1, but here we're just gonna do it in C++. Then data-driven code, that's when you use, if you, in Unity terms, it's the, nga ba yun? Unity, oh, forgot what it's called. Oh, it's the one where you can store, you create a class and then you can store that data and then you can just put, I mean, you can store those data through the editor. I forgot what it's called. Data asset? No, no, that's Unreal. Uh, but yeah, data assets in Unreal. I'm not sure if you've done data assets in GAMPROG 1. I can't recall. Probably not. So we're gonna talk about that, but that's for the second project naman. So yeah. Required software. So before I required 5.2 in GAMPROG 1, that was right. Good question. Before I work on this, scriptable object. Yes, thank you. Yes, yeah. You guys are better than me. No, no, I already forgot. Uh, Back in GAMPROG 1, what version of Unreal did you guys use? 4? Oh, okay. All right. Mm, 4. Why are we still at 4? Bakit biglang may 5.5? 4, but you use 5.5. Paano nangyari yun?
Sir, kami po bahala dun sa, engine version. Kami po pinapili.
I see, I see. Okay. So for this one, better if we work on the 5.5. 5.5 because it's the most latest, no? Nung time na yun. Wala lang. Kasi, did some research. Right now, pinaka-stable is 5.4. So I'm thinking we all use na lang 5.4. I would rather that we all use the same one. It's way much easier to work on and so that we're all in the same page when we're coding. All right. So we'll use 5.4. Uh, it's gonna use up a lot of your your storage again, another few gigabytes, but yeah. Okay. Then you also need Visual Studio. Visual Studio, it could be 2019 or 2022, or you could also use JetBrains. But that's up to you. You'll have to. I'm not sure if you have to do any actual setup for that for Unreal specifically, but yeah. Then you have our repository program, either fork or source tree. Up to you guys. Okay. Questions? Clarification? on what programs we're using? No? All good? Okay. Attendance. So, uh, for online, I'm not really strict with tardiness and whatnot, but if you're gonna be absent, at least give a valid reason why you're gonna be absent so that I don't count you as absent. Uh, for tardiness, as long as I see you at the start, or at the end of the class, then I'll count you as present. Okay? Kayo na bahala kung bigla kayong umalis sa gitna. Uh, that's your choice. Or biglang may nangyari, okay lang. Because again, we still have video recordings of these that I will post, right? So to get FDA, you need to have two. Uh, is it flat out two? Two or more. More than two. Uh, absence. So how do you do this? Remember, if you're late, no, you have no late. If you're absent, it's counted as one already, right? If you get absent three times, you are counted as failure due to absence, right? Any violent reaction here? No. Okay. So final grade. How is the final grade? 20% is your first project. Well, your second project, which is again what I said a while ago, it will be 80%. It will be 80%. So I would suggest na don't skimp on project one. Like don't try, do your best in completing project one because that is still 20%. So how big is the 20%? Um, Imagine that if you're not going to do 20%, you only the highest you can get for project two is 80%. Problem is you may or may not be able to finish project two because of uh how complicated it could be. So there's a chance you're not gonna complete it. There's a chance you might barely pass it. You might just get 70 something only. Because again, it's milestones. Just like not sure with your GAMPRG one. But yeah, it's milestone based. Okay. So please do project one. But yeah, project one, Endless Runner, C++. Project two, you'll be implementing advanced game mechanics. Since you'll be learning how to properly use how to do proper polymorphism and all. Uh, and you'll be using both blueprints and C++. Okay, questions here? Final grade criteria? Clarification? None? Okay. So your midterm, it's just 100% is just project one. If you get a R in midterm, that doesn't mean you're gonna get an R right away in your finals. It will you're still gonna be able to pass GAMPRG2, but again, it's gonna be hard if you don't pass midterms. Then for the rubrics, it's the usual. We have the requirements, the code quality, aesthetics, and UX. So requirements is your milestones, your code quality, that is how clean your code is, both in Blueprint and C++. Right? Aesthetics. Yeah, aesthetics because in your project two, the tower defense, it is up to you if you want to use your own assets or you want to use the provided assets. That's why we have aesthetics. So you also have to supply your own audio and whatnot. So 10%. And finally, UX user experience. because what's this? The requirements of the project 2 is just you have to do this, you have to do that. It doesn't specifically tell you how it would look like. Either you just want buttons, maybe you want a collapsible panel. Well, that's up to you. Maybe you wanna have a different way of implementing the placing of the towers. No, that's up to you also. That's why you also have user experience. Okay, questions? No, dali-dali na, no? Okay, so yeah, same thing. It's just the breakdown if you want to know how how it's graded. So there's that. So how do you submit? Does everyone have GitLab? Does anyone not have GitLab? Or does anyone have a problem with GitLab? Because back in Android programming, there was a lot of problems with GitLab. I would suggest not creating the repository first. More of like wait for me to fix the Dropbox because it should be a different name. But yeah, I mean, you can go make an account for it. Go ahead, but don't create the actual repository yet. All right. So really, no one else uses GitLab. Uh, I mean, no other um, faculty uses GitLab. But anyway, yeah. So there's a tutorial on how to create it, how to create your own repository. Um, what you have to do is you have to set it to private. Very important. Set it to private. Why? If it's public, there's a chance some other student could copy it. Some other student in future could copy it, right? So please set it to private. Um, then you're gonna add me as a developer. It's pado.csv, and again, this will be seen naman in your Dropbox. But please don't make it muna. I just remembered, I have to change the naming of our of the repository. Okay. And then send your repository link in Big Sky. Okay. So milestones. Submitting your milestones. So milestones are self-paced. There is no deadline for each milestone. However, there is a deadline for the entire project. So, so I'm not sure if this is what was done back in GAMPRG1 for you guys, but uh, I do set deadlines for it. But that doesn't mean that if you don't submit it by the time um, my deduction or you're not gonna be able to submit or something. No, I don't do that. For here, as long as you finish all your milestones before the end of the final milestone, I'll still count it. However, I am not going to be able to credit a milestone if the previous milestones were not complete or they are incomplete. What does this mean? So let's say you submitted milestones 1 to 5 in one day on the day of the final submission, right? However, if your milestones 2, 3, 4, 5 are okay, but there's something wrong with your milestone 1, I cannot grade milestones 2, 3, 4, 5. They are technically 0, right? So that's how it works. The previous milestones should be correct before I'm able to grade the other milestones. Now, you don't have to wait for me to grade your milestones. The moment you can submit it, then start working on your other milestones. Then uh, I'll check naman the milestones that you submit, and then if I have a feedback, It will be there. Then of course you can start changing your code based on that. So usually naman, it's not gonna force you to change all your code because a previous milestone was wrong. Sometimes, I mean, most of the time naman, it's just the uh, how you create the components, mga ganun. Yeah, it's usually something small. Okay. Now, yeah, students are required to defend their code. Defending your code, not really. Only if I see that there is or someone else has the same code as you. If I suspect that there is any cheating that is happening, either from maybe copying from another student or maybe copying from a student from the previous years, I will find out. And that one's that's easy to check naman no kung from a different from if you copied it from a different student from a different year. That's easy to check. But yeah, I'm gonna be seeing if you did it or not. Okay? Can we submit? Yes, of course. You can always resubmit. Can you accept? Awesome, but has a no, no, no. Your grade will not be lower. So remember, I can't grade the milestone until you finish it. So it's either you pass it or not. There's no in between. You don't get um half a point. Yes. Questions about that one? Does that make sense to everyone? As long as all the checklist, everything is done for the milestone, everything that has to be done, you followed all the instructions. Until that's done, wala. Zero yung milestone na yun. Yes? Questions? Clarification about that one? On grading the milestones? None? Clear? Just waiting if or you expect to follow the reference for each milestone. One to one? No. No, no, di naman. As long as I can see that your code is right, then um it'll pass for me. All right. There's a slight chance that your code may be a bit different, especially in project 2. Project 1, it's hard to not it's hard to be different for project 1 because it technically is just endless runner and that's quite basic. It's not even the outbreak. It's literally just the endless runner. So it's literally just you running forward and spawning the obstacles. It's very hard to to be different there, right? But yeah, it doesn't have to be one to one. Doesn't have, you don't have to use the same mesh, the same uh assets, right? It doesn't have to be. Okay. Any other questions or clarification? None. Okay. Final build must have reached a requirement grade of 50%. So why do I require you to reach a grade of 50%? Because if you think about it, remember 80% yung project 2. That is the build. Project 1 you don't have to build. You don't have to submit any build. It's only project 2. So, again, 80% see project 2. If you do not uh, get a 50% grade, that is literally at least or at most 40% na lang yung yung project 2 nyo. Yung final grade 40% lang. And if you completed project 1, that's 20%. So 40 plus 20, it's 60. That is not passing. you need at least 70% or 70 to pass to get a 1. Okay? So yeah. It's kind of parang sayang lang yung time natin if I try to grade your final build if you didn't even submit at least half of 50% of your project too. Okay? You don't have to be present. Sorry, you don't have to be present when I check the no the build. I can check it myself. Mm, yeah, I can check it myself. Then yeah, no repository and commit, no defense. So if out of nowhere you have a build, but you didn't even submit any milestones, because each milestone you're required to submit a commit link, right? So it doesn't make sense. But anyway, yeah. Questions? Final build? None. Okay. So yeah, that is for the intro for GAMPRG2. So um, I would say GAMPRG2 it has a difficulty spike on Project 2, a very huge difficulty spike. It is on milestone, I think 5 or something. I think there are 7 milestones in Project 2, and there's a difficulty spike on in milestone 5. Everything else kaya pa. That's where people really struggle because it's about the different kinds of towers and the different kinds of effects it'll give, and you have to code that, well, not entirely in C++, but you have to code it in a way that everything the base class can handle all that things. Okay, but yeah. So, any questions about the intro? Based on the Android? Not It's not based. I would say Android programming copied GAMPRO. I don't remember. Wait, Android. Android programming? Gumawa ba tayo ng tower defense sa Android programming? Was it Android? Was it not iOS? It was Android. Uh, yeah, you're right. You're right. Uh, Say bananas. I would say it is Android programming that copied from GAMPROG. It is almost the same. Um, let's see if you recall yung Android programming. You have two kinds of units, flying and ground, and then you also have a boss, na enemy units. Yeah, flying ground. There are some towers that can only target flying. I'm sorry, that can only target ground and not flying. Is there? Like the missile tower can only target um ground units, but the basic tower can target both ground and flying. Okay, see, so that's one different. You have a laser tower that will burn the enemy unit that's hit. So if the enemy gets a hit from a laser tower, every seconds for 5 seconds, it'll take damage. Burn tower, tawag nyo. Here it's called laser tower. Do you have a tower that gives you resources every something seconds, and if a unit dies within the tower, that tower you gain extra gold from the kill. Okay, see, that's new. You have a tower that increases the either fire rate or the firepower of the other towers. Okay, so there you have it. That's a sneak peek for your second project. So there's those kinds of towers. Imagine um, you have to create a base class for that, a base class for the tower that will somehow work for all the towers. Sir Filipina, funny ka? Joke lang. Gusto mo go in? No, no, no. No. You have to later on pa naman yun, eh. Mabilis lang yung ano, project project 1 is only I think 3 or 4 weeks lang. You have time. You have time to do project 2. Gawin mo muna project 1. Intindihan mo muna yung C++. Kasi sa project 2 you need your base class for the tower is a C++. Enemy also, base class is C++. Uh, Everything else, the projectiles and whatnot, you could choose to make it blueprint, but uh, it will be 100 times easier if you do it on C++. Yeah. Okay. Any more questions or clarification? So in general, what would we say is easier process? Blueprints or outright coding? Both. I would say both. Dependent. If you're just trying to prototype things, you can just simply do blueprint. See how it you would, but like you're trying to like try it out first in blueprint, see if it works because you will find out later or later on that compiling in C++ is very it takes too long. It takes so much time compiling code in C++. And also you later find out that it's a pay to win kind of thing. The higher the specs of your PC, the faster it'll compile. So that's the thing. So if you have a PC with that's not using SSD, it will take a bit longer to compile. This could also be a good reason to ask your parents for an upgrade for your storage, but that's up to you. Just kidding. All right. But yeah, for prototyping blueprints, but um, I would say C++ because it has you have the it's easier to code there. It's like from top to bottom. Um, you're able to do harder or more complex kind of functions easier there than in Blueprint. In Blueprint, para siyang spaghetti code. But in C++, it is much cleaner. Mga ganun. So there's those things. Okay? And we're going to talk about that on this. But yeah, any more questions for the intro? None. Okay. Sige. Let's go over to our second project. Second project. To the second PowerPoint, which is Unreal C++. This was from Sir Deng pa, but it still holds true. So, blueprints versus C++. So, why should you use C++? One, C++ offers the maximum flexibility. Like I said a while ago, you're gonna be able to use uh you're gonna be able to create complex things easier in C++. Not only that, but you have more control in C++. What does this mean? Um, you're able to do there are some things that you're able to do that you may not be able to do in Blueprint. There are those cases. Other thing is it's with just the code, you already know what is being made in for the actor or whatnot. Because in the code, you're gonna have to create the components yourself and whatnot. It's all there. It shows there, and then you can also see the functions that's being used. Yeah. So again, maximum flexibility. Next, good for writing a base class. Yeah. Again, it's easier to read there. You'll be able to see what is being used. Um, you also do this so that in case you want to go back to working to create a child class, right? You can just use C++ for it if you want. If not, you can go create a child class but a blueprint. So pwede na yun. Kaya bahala. Next, complex algorithms and mathematical expressions are better in code than visual. Like I said, for example, looping. Looping in Unreal, you have to use the for loop kind of thing, no? That's one. There's another one which is the while loop, and the while loop looks very awkward. You have a line from left to right, and then that thing just goes around. Uh, yeah, sorry, not thing. You have a line that goes all the way back to where you're supposed to loop, which is like spaghetti code ish. In here, you're gonna be able to easily create your complex algorithms, the for loops, the while loops, and whatnot. You can also use the math, some complex math, depende on uh, depende on your use case, whatnot. Yeah. So yeah, you're able to do that better than in Blueprint. Next, Blueprints will exponentially spaghettify within a short time. So not sure if you felt it back in GAMPRG1, but later on, if you continue to work on an actor or a character and you want to add more functionalities, it it's visually it's gonna be a lot. It's gonna be lines everywhere. And then what if tinamad ka, no? Instead of creating a function, you just put another line from, let's say, a function, a what's this? A custom event. You like connect it bigla out of to another custom event, and it spaghettifies things. In C++, however, again, it's just from top to bottom. It's not as complicated looking as in Blueprint, right? So I'm not sure if you felt that back in Gamprog 1, but um, you start working on it. If you start creating a game in just purely Blueprint, you'll feel it. You'll feel it. Next, easier and more encapsulation in code. In here, well, in Unreal, in Blueprint, you can technically encapsulate stuff, but it's only from just private and public. I'm not sure if it's protected in Blueprint, but again, it's many times easier in C++ for that. You can just set the access modifier for it. Either you just want it public, either you want it protected, so that in the child class of this has access to that, etc., etc. So yeah, there's that. Next, maximal potential performance. So programmers still need to know how to optimize. Uh, Keyword here, potential performance. One thing is they do say that creating things in C++, I mean a code that runs in C++ is much faster than code running in Visual Studio. Sorry, in Blueprint. My bad. That's one thing. The other thing is, uh, you could potentially uh, create code that is way more optimized than doing so in Blueprint, potentially, again. Okay. It's still up to you to find out how to optimize. Next, it's easy to pinpoint bugs. It's easy to miss on things in blueprints. Yeah, you'll find out right away if there's a problem. If you try to compile and there's a problem, sure, yeah. If you're able to compile and you see there's a problem, uh, you'll find out right away, especially with the log of it, the logs. And you'll find out where the problem's happening. But it's learning how to read logs is a thing. So you'll learn about that later on. Finally, better error handling. You can use assert or throw exceptions in code. You're not able to do that in Blueprint assert. But yeah, like in case you want to do error handling. So error handling, it's when you like if you know a error is gonna happen here, you put an error handling. You want to check if it will if this happens, if a error happens, you can make it do something else. That's error handling. Questions? You don't have to memorize this. Okay. What we're gonna learn here, you don't have to fully memorize. Later on, you're gonna memorize something, but this one, it's just so you know. Now, okay. So yeah. So why use C++? So next, why do I hate Unreal C++? Uh, One, it's C++, lots of boilerplate code and weird errors. You'll find out that when you code in C++ and for some reason the code is right, or it looks right at least, but in Unreal it's not right. So that's a potential thing. Um, and there's a specific way how to fix it. So that's one thing that is medyo off that I hate as well in C++. You have weird errors. And one of those weird errors is your actor spawns at or at least all the components spawns at 000, but in your editor, it's not in 000, it's in another location. And there's a way to fix that. You just have to we'll learn about it later on. Boilerplate code, when you mean boilerplate code, it's something that you have to always set up. And there's a lot of that. There's a lot of that in C++ because unlike, like, for example, the actor, unlike in Blueprint, the moment you create an actor, you immediately have a scene component as a root, right? In Unreal, when you create an actor, there is no root component, nothing. So you have to create the root component yourself. And then you have to create the other components yourself. So yeah, there's that. That's a like you always have to do it. Next, it's slow and buggy autocomplete. So this is based on the what do you call that in the Visual Studio? So Visual Studio has a autocomplete feature, right? But what it does is it has to read all the code first before it actually works. Now, depending on your hard drive, uh, it could read it slowly. Maybe it'll take a while to make it work for the autocomplete to start working. Or if you have a SSD, it could take a lesser amount of time for it to finish reading everything before it can start autocompleting. So yeah, uh, that's one. Other macros do not autocomplete. So in Unreal, in C++, there are things called macros that they don't really they're not really part of the class, the class of the of the of Unreal. However, it's there. You're gonna have it's not gonna pop up at all, but if you use it, it will work. There's those things. Mga ganun. So you have to memorize it. You'll learn about it later on. Uh, it'll take a while before the compiler recognizes that you have an error. So yeah, mm, let's say you coded it, and then 10 seconds after, bigla lang may error ka dun. Sometimes you'll think, why is there an error there? Maybe you did something earlier, but it's literally just Visual Studio taking a while before it finally realizes that there is something wrong with this line. So yeah, there's that. Next, slow compile time. Like I said a while ago, either SSD or HDD. It depends on what you have. Um, if it's HDD, it will take a while to compile. It's trying to read because it's trying to use all you it's trying to read in your HDD yung code mo, encode ng everything inside of the Unreal project. That's why. So that's why in SSD it's much faster because the read times are much faster. Next, Visual Studio needs to parse thousands of files on first launch. So what does this mean? See, Unreal, when you create a project, unlike Unity, where when you create a Unity project, you're not able to see yung code, no? You're not able to check how does game objects work? What are the functions in game objects? You're not able to see that class. You either have to find it online or you learn about it when you code. In Unreal, when you create a project, all the classes are there. Start all the way from actors to characters to player controller, everything. It will create those files for you. And that's why it takes a while to parse through because on first launch it's gonna read all through that. It's gonna create all through that. So yeah. Next, include what you use. So unlike again C sharp where you can simply just um, get whatever, like just put in whatever class you need and then gana siya. In C++, you have to include it, right? On the very top, you have to include what class you want to use, and then um, if you plan to use another class that you created, you have to remember either if should you include it in the header, should you include it in the CPP, and then you have to forward declare, etc., etc. There's that. So you have to remember your BASPROG 1 and 2. I am not sure if you use C++ in BASPROG 3. Finally, some parts of the API is counterintuitive. So yeah, again, there are things here that uses macros, and um, it's just weird. You'll find out. You'll find out about it. Questions? None? All good? Okay. So best practices. So best practice is most of your base class should be written in C++. We do this so that if you already created a C++ class, at least you can interact. You're able to call or use uh, another C++ class because you're unable to use a blueprint class inside a C++ class. Okay, that's not possible. Like let's say you created a actor in Blueprint. In C++, uh, you're not gonna have any access to it. You don't have access to its functions. You don't have access to anything of it. kailangan dapat if you're gonna work with the C++, um, it can only work with other C++ class. Sure, you can create a blueprint later on of the C++ class, and then that's where you can work on adding the other um other blueprints. Sure, you can do that. But the base class itself, wala. You don't have access to it. Next, prototype with blueprints. So like I said a while ago when someone asked, it is much faster uh, to create prototypes using blueprints because the time you spend in compiling takes too long, and sometimes it really slows you down. Your flow just stops because you're waiting for it to finish. So that's the thing. Next, to prevent reparenting, always start with a C++ class. Yeah, somewhat what I said on the first part. Uh, you can choose to just create a C++ class, put in the components that you need, but it doesn't have any function. That's fine. Kasi malay mo in the future you want code something that's complex. And at least you have that option to code it in C++. So there's that. Next, you cannot access blueprint classes via C++. Like I said a while ago, also, apparently I went ahead. Um, you can't use blueprint classes in C++. C++ can only work with other C++. Okay. Uh, Next, expose what is only needed. Well, sabagay, wala pang GAMPRG2. Um, if you know about solid principles and OOP, especially the abstraction and uh, encapsulation, no? You only want to expose what is needed. You only want to have things that are public. You only want things to be in private, depending on the code. So like things like private, if it only works or within the class, then just make it private. But if you need to expose it to other classes, then of course you make it public. If you think you're gonna use it in a child class, then make it protected. Try to try to try to expose what is only needed now. Next, expose implementable events. This is the most reliable way to respond to the base class events. So you're able to create events in C++. What does this mean? Sure, you can create a function. However, by default, it won't appear as an event in Blueprint. But there's a certain macro that you have to put so that it'll appear in Blueprint. But yeah, expose it, make it public. Uh, Better not just private lang. You have to expose those. You'll learn about it later on. Next, anything that is visual or playing sounds should be written in Blueprint. You will not want to code it in C++. Why? Because if you're going to code something, let's say you have to play this sound here. The question is, where will they find that sound? You could code it in C++ so that it will find a file within this directory, but that is very prone to um, errors. Kasi what if biglang na-move yung file na yun? What will happen is it will break your game. Maybe it also break your computer. Who knows? Depending on how severe it is. Maybe it'll create a infinite loop. Oh, sorry. When you mean break, more of like um uh your computer will stop responding because it's looping infinitely. But there's those there are times that happens. But yeah. Parang Unity rin ish. But at least Unity hanggang ano, hanggang, yung program lang. It's not gonna crash your computer. Anyway, yeah. So do it in Blueprint. Rather do it in Blueprint than in C++. Next, create the required components in code. Also set the root component in code. Yeah, uh, that's more of like a given thing. Next, link assets via Blueprint. You wouldn't want again to search in C++, like search this directory for this file. No, you'd rather do it na lang in Blueprint, where you put in there in the editor which mesh you're using, um, which blueprint you want to use, etc., etc. Ayun. Next, there are tools that are only exist in Blueprint. Use them whenever necessary. So in Blueprint, you have tools like creating a particle system or delaying for X amount of seconds. There's that. There are more pa. So use them whenever necessary. You don't have to force yourself to just work in C++. Next, handle errors or fail safes in code as much as possible. Uh, like I said, C++ has error handling with assert and throw, but that is up to you to use. Finally, compile your code via Unreal Engine. So you could technically compile in the Visual Studio, but Unreal Engine gives a much better log. You can see it much better there. Unlike in C++, C++ may just appear na, hey, there's something wrong here, but it doesn't tell you why. But in Unreal, at least there, you can see why is it not working. You can see what error code it's using, and you know how to fix it. But we will learn about that later on. Okay, questions? Best practice? How should I approach with stuff? I should use blueprints for stuff. Oh, sorry. How should I approach which stuff I should use blueprints for and stuff for C++ coding? Huh. Or C++. Depende. If you think you're gonna create a blueprint that is not gonna use any C++ at all, then yeah, sure, create a blueprint. But if you think it's gonna use sub-complex algorithms or complex functions, or maybe you think it would be much easier to code it in C++, then you can just use C++. You'll have those times where uh you will think that I think this is much easier done in C++ in code than in Visual and then in Blueprint. You'll have those times. You'll see. But yeah, uh you'll find out. Any more questions? Are we going to translate blueprints to C++? Uh well, I mean you could for project 1, you kind of could do that. But in general, you could prototype in Blueprint and then do it in C++. You could do that, but it's mostly just well, for especially in project 2, you're going to be coding from scratch. You're not gonna unless you prototype it first in Blueprint. But yeah, you're gonna code it from scratch. Any more questions? You don't have to memorize again. This you don't have to memorize these. It's just a good to know kind of thing. No questions? Okay. Blueprints and C++ are meant to be used with each other. So there's no better. There's no better na. Oh, better if you only use Blueprint or better if you use C++. No, they are meant to be used together. When you create a C++, you can create a blueprint for it so that it works for other blueprints, etc., etc. There's that. You can't just fully be C++ because there are times where it is much easier done in just Blueprint. There will be those cases. Okay. So, I hope okay pa kayo. This one, what I'm going to be talking about here, you don't have to memorize, but you have to, you can keep this. You have to, wait up. You're not really required to memorize this one, but you have to remember at least. Or you have to look back at this, what we're going to talk about. Because what we're going to talk about here is just some basic stuff to know about C++ programming in Blueprint. Okay. So una, the Unreal Reflection System. So when you create a normal C++ class, it's usually just class, no? Class and then public, private, you create the constructor, whatever. But for Unreal, it's not gonna appear right away unless you use the right um, macros. So this is where the Unreal Reflection System works. You need to use, let's say, this one, uClass Blueprintable. This will let Unreal know that this class can be created as a blueprint, right? If it's just uClass and nothing, then Unreal will say, okay, this is just a class. It is not, you cannot create a blueprint or whatnot. Mga ganun. Next, you have uStruct. Like for if you use uStruct, that means Unreal will think, okay, this is a struct, then uh, you can use the struct's variables, properties in other blueprints. Then you have view property. This lets the Unreal know that this is a property or a variable. So it enables member variables to be serialized, access from blueprint, garbage collector, etc. So yeah, it'll let Unreal know that this is a variable, and depending on the things inside the the parentheses, it depends on either it will be just read only, it is a read write. So we'll learn about that later on. Next, you have function. This tells Blueprint that okay, this is a function. Uh, Depending on the again things inside the parentheses, it could maybe be a event dispatcher. It could maybe be a implementable event. It could just be a normal event, etc. Finally, generated body. This is normally created right away when you try to create a C++ class in Unreal. Lalabas agad to. It is basically just a boilerplate code to set up your objects. Okay? So kind of remember. You don't have to like memorize by heart, but you have to remember these. You be using a lot of property, function. Class, not always. You might use it once or twice to change it. Maybe you don't want it as blueprintable or not. But yeah. Struct again, maybe once or twice, depending on uh your use case for project two. Project one, we don't need struct. Okay. Data type prefixes. So prefixes, that is literally what it means is the very first um uh letter in in a variable. Like here we have T. So you see a lot of T something something, T something something. Those are called template classes. For you have class, you object, you actor component, you spring arm component. It is a prefix that shows that it inherits from you object and you actor component. If it's a, it means it's an actor. It inherits from actor. So a something's a what is a obstacle or a pickup, that means it inherits from actor. S widget, uh, not really use it. You're not gonna use it at all, but good to know. It inherits from S widget, a widget class. Then E, if it has E, that means it's an enum, meaning it should have different kinds of data in it right away. Like, uh, what nga ba E? E collision handling, uh, that's one. Well, you'll see a lot of ano, mga ganito, mga enums. Then B is for Boolean. So the moment you see it's B is something, B is allow, you know it's a Boolean. It's either true or false. F is uncategorized classes. That is when this is mostly used in event dispatchers. You will learn about that later on. But yeah, you have to use F something something. Okay. These prefixes though are stripped in editor and blueprint. So if your class is called a obstacle, in blueprint it'll just be obstacle. Okay. Or you have a U actor component or U spring arm component. In Unreal, it's just be a spring arm component. They strip off the prefix. Okay. So don't have to fully memorize, but kind of remember now. Now, view property. For your property to be accessible by the blueprint, you must mark it with view property. So without it, Unreal doesn't know what to do with it. It will just leave it blank. You're not going to be able to use it. But with view property, depending on specify the things inside here, like edit anywhere. That means it is editable, or like there's such a thing as view, just a view only, mga ganun. Or here, category, it'll say that its category is in damage. So that means in the editor, there's going to be its own panel for it, for just damage. Mga ganun. So you can modify the nature of property. Okay. So yeah, you could either have it for blueprint read write only. Ayan. So the U property specifiers, these are the ones inside here. So this one you can kind of have to remember this one. You have edit anywhere, which means you can edit it in the editor or in the level itself. If it's visible anywhere, it will show up there, but it will just be a grayed out uh, text box in the usual. Sorry, not the usual. You never use it. It will just be grayed out. You can see the value of it, but it is not editable. It's only visible. Then you have blueprint read only. So in case uh, you only want to access it to get the data, but you don't want to set the data in blueprint, you just use blueprint read only. If you want to read and write, then you have to have a specifier called blueprint read write. Then category, again category, and there's more. So It'll be entirely up to you. These ones, they're not um, autocompletes. View property is also not an autocomplete kind of thing. You're gonna have to type it out yourself. All of these. Unreal, the Visual Studio will not help you here. Okay, so those are the specifiers for view property. There's more. If you want to find out more for view function, so this tells Unreal that this is a function. So you have to mark a function with a U function and have the proper specifiers for it, depending on your, again, use case. If you just want to be callable, if you wanted it to be implementable, so those are the specifiers. So you have blueprint callable, so that will be just like this. It is a function that you just call. Blueprint implementable event, those are the ones where you create the function in C++. Sorry, you create just the function, but you don't implement it at all in C++. You implement it in Blueprint. So why would you do that? In case that it's much better to code it in Blueprint. We do this Blueprint implementable event, but you want to use it in C++. Like you want to call it, for example, um, for example, when the player dies or something. Maybe I want to code that in Blueprint, but I want to put it in C++ where I will call it myself if the health is 0. So I could say health if health 0, call this event, this function. But the implementation itself on what it happens when this function is called, that is done in Blueprint. Does that make sense? You're implementing it. You won't have any code at all of it in the CPP file. It's just there in the header lang. That's for implementable event. Native event is kind of like a both callable and implementable event. Uh, but there is a default implementation base class. Yeah. Blueprint pure. This is the ones where if you only want to get a value from a function. So that means you don't have to call it any you don't have to like call it like this one. It creates a pure function. I'm not sure if you've used that back in GAMPRG1, but what appears is, I mean, you created the function itself, but when you call it, it's not something where you need to connect it with the line, the white line. You don't have to connect it at all. It just appears as a node where there's a value that you can get from it. I'll teach you later on how to use it or how it looks like. In case di nyo nagawa to. Questions? Clarification? For the specifiers of U property and U function? Okay pa kayo? Following? You can always look back at these. You can always take a picture of these. Okay lang. It's okay to not memorize this right away. The more you code in C++, the more these things get um the more these things are easier to remember because you'll be using these a lot. Okay. Then new object. So there's no questions. I would say there's no questions. Okay. Where again, UObject, everything comes from UObject. It is a base building block of Unreal Engine. It has the reflection of properties and methods, relational methods, garbage collection, finding new objects by name, um, get support, etc., etc. You won't really touch this at all, UObject. It's just something good to know that again, everything comes from UObject. A actor is literally just the actor, but in C++. Uh, Before an A actor can be placed in the world, it must have at least one use scene component. So like I said a while ago, when you create an actor in C++, it literally has nothing. You yourself have to code that it has to have a component in it. So to spawn an actor, you must call uworld, call spawn actor. To destroy, you call destroy. Um, Unlike in Unity, I think Unity it's destroy and then inside it is whatever either the game object or the just the um component, right? In here, it is you have to you have to put the actor itself, or I mean, you have to put the actor itself and then arrow destroy. Yeah, like so in this case, this arrow destroy if you want to destroy that actor. So a actor has events called during its life cycle. We have begin, play, tick, and play. So just like Unity, you have these begin, play, tick, and play. It has more. It has more events like these in um, a actor, but it's not, you don't always have to use it. Yeah, this is just one of the things. Begin, play, tick, and end play. Then you have the actor components. These are the ones that are you place in an actor. So these are the pluggable components. Components can be shared by different actors. So like the spring arm component, the camera component, those are actor components. So if you create a actor component, you could use it for your other actors. So a actor handles the high level goals for the object, while the actor component performs the individual tasks. So for example, remember you had a health component in Outbreak. So something like that. You create these UX components for individual tasks for the actor itself, so that actor doesn't the actor doesn't have to handle that. It can handle more higher level goals. It's, it's something like Unity. Next, actor answers the question what, while the component answers the question what is this thing made of. Uh, yeah, I can. Yeah. Components can be arranged in hierarchy. So we do that in Blueprint. You'd have to tell which one is connected to which one is a child of which. Also, you'll be doing that. Uh, I mean, yeah, you'll be doing that for the hierarchy. A actor has a root component property. So this is the topmost component in the hierarchy. So if you create a actor, the very top is the root component. So in the C++, root component is yun, yung pinaka-top. Yung what is holding all the components. So in most cases, a actor in Blueprint, the root component is a scene component. So it's up to you. You could actually change that if you wanted to in Blueprint. But in C++, you have to specify yourself what is the root component. So use scene components gives you component transform. The actor root component must be a using component for it to be placed in the world. Yes. Uh, yeah. I don't think I have to explain this more. Finally, components are ticked along with the Oni actor. So, just like the actor, it also has a tick, and it just follows with the actor itself. Okay, so that's actor component. Uh, this one you don't have to memorize this one. You won't even have a quiz about this. It's just a good to know. So, like here, our root component is a capsule component, and then you'll see here that our component of mesh are their parent transform is the capsule component. And you see here you have the first person camera component. It's also uh, a child transform of the capsule component. Then you have mesh one that is connected to the first person, etc. You would have to code that individually. You have to tell them who they are attached to. Then you also have the character movement. Oh wait, character movement is more of like that's a given for when you create a character. But yeah, questions after components or actors? None. Okay. So primitive data types, these are the ones. Well, in C++, it's different. You don't have string. It's F string unless you include that library for string. But yeah. So use car instead of car. Use F string instead of string. Use int32 instead of int, so that it'll be so it can work in every both in Unreal and in C++. Float is still float. Double is still double. So like F string. So yeah, instead of using SCD colon the string, we use F string. However, you'll see that it is kind of complex because you need to use a text macro to build your string. So you can see here F string text. This is my test F string. It's a lot. You have to include the text. That is if you want to use F string. There are not that much cases naman you have to use F string. You can use just this one. Like if you wanna name it or something, then you can just use this line, uh, the double quote. Then TRA. So instead of vector, if you remember Bassprog 2, instead of creating vectors, you could use TRA. It is a powerful and it is way powerful, more efficient than vector. Uh, but it's almost the same thing. You can add, you can remove, but this also works in Blueprint. You're able to create a TRA and you can make it appear in Blueprint. So yeah, initialization usage is similar to vector. Iterate using the ranged for feature. Yeah. Uh, to go through all the data inside a TRA, use a for loop. And the for loop is the one it's like a for each kind of loop. You could technically use the for and then int I is equal to 0, I is less than the TRA that length. Sure, that could still work, but again, up to you and your use case. Okay, TRA very useful. Tmap and tset. This is more for optimization, but this is a kind of good to know kind of thing. Because remember, tmap and tsets are way faster than just arrays. Yeah, they're way faster than arrays. Garbage collection in Unreal is kind of automatic. The moment you destroy it, Unreal handles it, how it is destroyed. You don't have to worry about it. So using the reflection system, you don't have to manually manage your object memory. Uh, Unreal handles it itself. If you delete it, it gets deleted. It destroys all the other um, memory that you used to create a, to create an instance, etc., etc. Unreal handles it. Uh, Even though you access your garbage collected, you have to call its destroy function if you want it to be removed from the world. Yeah, makes sense. When a new object is garbage collected, all new property refers to it will be automatically set to null. Yeah. So it handles it perfectly. You don't have to worry about the other things. So for non-new object, read garbage collection section. So in here, you, I don't think you can ever create a non-new object at all, at least in this class. But maybe later on, maybe you want uh, a more complex kind of project. Then maybe you have to learn about this for garbage collection. Or else, if you don't garbage collect, you're gonna use too much memory, and then God knows if you've already used up all the RAM. Okay, so yep, that was a slugger. That's a lot of stuff, but they're not everything you have to memorize. There are only some things now that you need to know, that you need to memorize, like the specifiers, the U property function. You just have to know how A actors work, how you A actor components work, the array. You're gonna use this uh maybe a lot, depende. But yeah, you get used to this. All right. Questions? Clarification? None? All good naman? Okay. So if there's no questions or clarification, uh yeah, that's all for today lang naman. Next week, we will we will start coding. Now, as much as possible, I would have wanted this um face to face because C++ can be quite a struggle at the start, but no choice. It has to be online. Uh, yeah. So next week we're gonna start coding C++. It'll be recorded in naman in case you are not able to go there or you want to look back at it, and you'll see how different it is to just Unity or to just blueprints. It is very, might be irritating. Okay. So if there are no questions or clarifications or any concerns, that's it for today. I'll be seeing you guys next week. Same time, 6:30. Uh, yeah, yeah, yeah. That's it. Yep. So yeah, that's it all for today. You guys can go and have your night.